हमने इससे पहले पीपल सीएमएम के ऊपर एक इंट्रोडक्टरी डिस्कशन की थी। आज हम पीपल सीएमएम के मुख्तलिफ जो मैच्योरिटी लेवल्स हैं उनके ऊपर बात करेंगे, फिर देखेंगे कि हर मैच्योरिटी लेवल में एक्सेप्ट फॉर द इनिशियल वन कौन से प्रोसेस एरियाज़ हैं और उनका क्या काम है और क्या किस किस्म की मैच्योरिटी एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन अचीव करती है बाय अप्लाइंग पीपल सीएमएम। तो सबसे पहले मैं आपको दोबारा से वो विजुअल दिखाना चाहता हूँ जिसमें पीपल सीएमएम के मुख्तलिफ मैच्योरिटी लेवल्स दिखाए गए हैं और उसमें जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो एक दफ़ा मेंशन की गई हैं। तो अब आप इस डिस्कशन के शुरू में ही इस पिक्चर को जहन में रखें, इस फिगर को जहन में रखें। सबसे पहले हमारे पास इनिशियल लेवल है जिसमें इनकंसिस्टेंट मैनेजमेंट है। लेवल 2 के ऊपर पीपल मैनेजमेंट है। लेवल 3 पे कॉम्पिटेंसी मैनेजमेंट है। लेवल 4 पे कैपेबिलिटी मैनेजमेंट है और लेवल 5 पे चेंज मैनेजमेंट है। और जो प्रैक्टिसेस इंट्रोड्यूस होती हैं लेवल 1 से लेवल 2 पे वो रिपीटेबल प्रैक्टिसेस हैं। लेवल 2 से लेवल 3 पे कॉम्पिटेंसी बेस्ड प्रैक्टिसेस हैं। लेवल 3 से लेवल 4 पे जाने के लिए मेजर्ड एंड एम्पावर्ड प्रैक्टिसेस इंट्रोड्यूस की जाती हैं और फाइनली लेवल 4 से लेवल 5 पे जाने के लिए कंटिन्यूसली इम्प्रूविंग प्रैक्टिसेस एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में इंट्रोड्यूस की जाती हैं। Let's talk about the initial level first. Organizations operating at maturity level 1 or the initial level have difficulty retaining talented individuals. और जब आप उन organizations की management से बात करें तो they always complained about shortage of talent. However, their inconsistencies in their practices belies their claim that there is shortage of talent. In fact, the market is full of talented people, but they have to create an environment in which talented and hardworking professionals would like to stay and work. Low maturity organizations are poorly equipped to respond to talent shortages with anything other than slogans. They said, yes, we want good people, but we are not able to get good people. The fact of the matter is that the culture within the organization is such that the talented staff would rather work somewhere else and not work for that organization. Despite the importance of talent, workforce practices on low maturity organizations are often ad hoc and inconsistent. ये पहले भी बात हो चुकी है कि वहाँ पर जो practices हैं वो ad hoc होती हैं, inconsistent होती हैं. They are not in line with the career goals of individuals, and organizations as such have no plan to and no willingness to enhance the careers of and competencies of the technical staff. In some cases, the organization has not defined workforce practices, and in other cases, it has not trained responsible individuals to perform according to the required competency levels. जो organization maturity level 1 पर operate करती हैं, they typically exhibit 4 characteristics: inconsistency in performing practices, displacement of responsibility, ritualistic practices which are for the sake of doing a practice. In fact, nothing concrete is actually done, and emotionally detached workforce where the individuals are not interested in having a long-term relationship with the organization. The individuals are not interested in the stakes of the organization. Rather, they are looking at the first opportunity to leave the organization and go and work somewhere else. And so is the case with management. Managers and supervisors in low maturity organizations are ill prepared to perform their workforce responsibility. Management itself is a very important and complex competency that has to be learned, that has to be taught by good managers. And management training is sparse in these low maturity organizations. They assume that management skill is either innate or is acquired by observing other managers. No formal training is provided, and as a result, not only the management of staff and workforce is inadequate, but also as a result they are creating ill-prepared managers of future, because the managers in waiting who are going to take over when their current management leaves are also going to behave the same way and perform in the same manner. And so they are not only mismanaging workforce, they're also teaching their or training their next line of managers to do the same. As I said, that the management itself is very complex and difficult competency. It requires not only technical knowledge but also management and interpersonal skills, which are not very intuitive for many people. So whenever the a manager is appointed or someone is trained as a manager, he or she should be provide adequate training, not only of technical areas, on management areas like estimation and schedule monitoring and things like that, but also interpersonal skills, teaching them how to communicate, teaching them how to listen. This is something that we talked about earlier, that listening is an important aspect of any management work, whether it is at people management level or at competency-based management level. So the listening is something that these low maturity organizations typically don't do. That is, that managers and supervisors don't do. There are exceptions. I'm not saying that all the organizations that operate at maturity level 1 have people who are running bad management practices or following bad management practices, but there is a lot of variation. And since people are not trained to manage practices and manage skills and manage people, each individual has his or her own style of doing it, and that is fine as long as it remains up to the style. But if individuals are not focused, managers are not focused, they will not be able to achieve and improve their management practices. So it is something that is worrisome, because earlier it was considered, like 2 or 3 decades ago, it was considered that management, and particularly project management, is a waste of time, it's an overhead. But as we have increased our knowledge and understanding, there is a lot of emphasis in following best practices related to project management and people management. There are a lot of case studies that fundamentally supports this idea that active and good management practices are key to success, more so than technical work for providing products and services. And that is something that many organizations have yet to learn, and then they need to do that, that is to learn management and learn management techniques and apply them as faithfully as suggested by people CMM, to enhance their workforce and to enhance the skills of and competency levels of the people who work for that organization. It is obviously not necessary that all organizations strictly follow people CMM, but it does provide ways to improve the people-related best practices and workforce enhancement best practices. One of the key things, and in a bad sense, is that major causes of voluntary turnover in organizations is related to individuals' relationship with their managers or supervisors, that is their immediate bosses. And the first step in changing this state of affairs is to get managers to take responsibility for the capability and development of those who report to them. So if a manager does that, then he or she is going to, the natural next step, be willing to invest in that, in his or her workforce, and enhance their capabilities and skills. And so those organizations which do not invest in their own workforce and this enhancement of the skills of the workforce will face the exit or exodus of large number of talented people from that organization. Let's now talk about maturity level 2 organizations. Here, it is a very important responsibility of the managers to be responsible personally for the development and performance of workforce working under him or her. And once you have that scenario, the manager is ultimately going to start investing in the people who work for him or her. So the focus of managers' attention at the unit level issues are naturally driven to handle the staffing issues, to coordinating commitments, to providing resources for the accomplishment of different tasks, for managing performances, and for developing skills, as well as making compensation decisions, rather than just ignoring these issues. These are the issues which can make or break a company in terms of a good team environment, in terms of the culture and the environment that is necessary for successful organization. And this works as the foundation for a good workforce that will ultimately used, or the practices that good workforce uses is going to be ultimately incorporated and implemented in the entire organization. So at the unit level, which is under the control of a line manager, the issues that I've talked about are addressed, and the people management issues are addressed so that these best practices from these units can then be incorporated at work group level and at entire organization level. Maturity 2 level organizations focus on establishing basic practices in units that address immediate problems of the people and prepare managers to implement more sophisticated practices at higher levels. As I said, in maturity level 2 organization, managers are vigilant of problems that hinder performance in their units, and their focus is to get good performance. And some of the problems that they face are, and that can lower the performance rates, are work overload, environmental distractions, unclear performance objectives or feedback, lack of relevant knowledge or skill. And once a good manager sees that there is need for a skill to be taught or knowledge to be conveyed to or transmitted to an individual, they will make sure that this happens. And this is what is the job of a manager. It is not the job of a manager to manage schedule of an individual, but rather to make resources available to the staff that works for him or her and ensures that they perform very well. Similarly, poor communication. Poor communication is a very common problem, and one of the main reasons why organizations have a very ad hoc culture in their organizations where people's concerns are not listened to. And then this low morale. All of these things will ultimately result in low morale of the talented people. The effort to ensure that the workforce practices are performed in each unit begins when the executive management commits the organization to continuously improve the knowledge, skills, motivation, and performance and its workforce. The thing that is very important and has to be understood fully is that this motivation and impetus always comes from the top. Line managers and even middle management cannot fully convince the rank and file that they're committed to having competent workforce unless it becomes a corporate policy that comes from the top, and the top management, the higher management, is willing to invest and provide resources, including money, to enhance the skills of its workforce. And ultimately this starts from the very small unit or the lowest level units, which teams under the managers, and then it goes to work groups and ultimately to the entire organization. And these directions of providing and supporting and enhancing workforce skills and processabilities have to be, as I said, supported by funds, resources, trainings, and also by a firm policy that the organization is committed to increasing the skill level and the knowledge base of its workforce. Another thing that has to also come from the top management is the accountability. Executive management has to communicate that the managers have to be responsible for the development and performance of their workforce, and they have to institute best practices and implement them effectively in their own units. And if they do not do that, then they are accountable to the top management. And that is something that, if it is stated clearly in the policy, will steer all the managers in that direction, because otherwise they will also be held accountable for not following corporate policy. In applying People CMM, it is important to distinguish between managers and management. This is a very interesting concept, that responsibilities need to be managed, and there are people who are managers, but there is not necessarily a required one-to-one mapping between the two. Typically in ad hoc organizations, people are focused, managers are focused on this job is blurred, these definitions is blurred between management and managers and responsibilities and people. At maturity level 2, units become stable environments for performing work. Units are able to balance their commitment with available resources, and organizations are capability for performing work is best characterized by the capability of units to meet commitments. The example that comes to mind is very typically an armed forces example, where each unit has their own capability and they perform according to the required capability that their officers ask them to do, and ultimately these units become joined up in larger units and brigades and armies. So although I'm not saying that intellectual activity or corporate activity is exactly the same as running a military operation, but the resemblance is so that each unit in armed forces have their own capabilities, and they achieve their capabilities by ensuring that people that require the skills needed to perform the assigned work are actually acquired by those people, and performance is regularly discussed to identify actions that need to be improved. And that same approach of assessments of workforce capability has to be done in the corporate world. Measurements of status and performance of the workforce activities provide management with means of monitoring and ensuring that appropriate performance of the workforce practices is being carried out. And that's what I was talking about, that continuous assessments have to be done, and that is at the unit level is the prime responsibility of the line management. One of the first benefits organizations experience when they implement improvements guided by People CMM is reduction in voluntary turnover. And once people are not leaving for lack of good environment in an organization, for lack of investment and lack of seriousness of the management to invest in people, then that organization can certainly grow in path of success. At maturity level 2, People CMM addresses one of the most frequent causes of turnover, which I had mentioned in while we were talking about maturity level 1, and that is poor relations with immediate supervisor. Once that cause is gone, then you can concentrate on your work. And I'm going to now show you a slide which covers or describes different process areas of level 2. Here you can see there are 6 process areas for level 2: staffing, communication and coordination, work environment, performance management, training and development, and compensation. Staffing, the purpose of staffing is to establish a formal process by which committed work is matched to unit resources and qualified individuals are recruited, selected, and transitioned into assignments. Communication and coordination is a very important process area. The purpose of this process area is to establish timely communication throughout the organization and to ensure that the workforce has the skills to share information and coordinate activities efficiently. The purpose of work environment is to establish and maintain physical working conditions and to provide resources that allow individuals and work groups to perform their tasks efficiently without unnecessary distractions. And this is a very important part of achieving maturity and getting to higher levels of maturity. The purpose of performance management is to establish objectives related to committed work against which unit and individual performance can be measured. To discuss performance against these objectives and to continuously enhance performance. The purpose of training and development is to ensure that all individuals have the skills required to perform their assignments and are provided relevant development opportunities. And the purpose of compensation is to provide all individuals with remuneration and benefits based on their contribution and value to the organization. तो ये वो प्रोसेस एरियाज हैं जो कि लेवल 2 के ऊपर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को इंट्रोड्यूस करने पड़ते हैं टू बी असेस्ड एट लेवल 2 ऑफ पीपल CMM. यहाँ पे ये बात है कि करने पड़ते हैं, कोई फोर्स नहीं है, बट फॉर देयर ओन बेनिफिट. अब हम डिफाइंड लेवल के ऊपर बात करते हैं. तो लेवल 3 जो है डिफाइंड लेवल, इसमें जो हमारा मकसद है, यानी किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का ये मकसद है कि वो उन प्रैक्टिसेस को जो यूनिट लेवल के ऊपर सक्सेसफुल हैं और उनके फ़ायदा नज़र आता है ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को, मैनेजमेंट को, उनको तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में इम्प्लीमेंट किया जाए और इनकॉर्पोरेट किया जाए. तो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन वाइड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाया जाता है इस लेवल के ऊपर, और इस तरह एक उसका ये फ़ायदा होता है कि तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक ही तरह की प्रैक्टिसेस को यूज़ करते हैं. और इसके लिए ये ज़रूरी है, जैसा कि तमाम प्रोसेस मैच्योरिटी फ्रेमवर्क की नेसेसिटी है कि जो इससे पिछला लेवल होता है उसकी प्रोसेस एरियाज़ को भी इम्प्लीमेंट किया जाए. तो द प्राइमरी ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ डिफाइंड लेवल is to help an organization gain a competitive advantage by developing the various competencies that must be combined in its workforce to accomplish its business activities. यानी कि across the board तमाम organization के अंदर workforce में ऐसी competencies हों जो कि उसके business objective को meet करने के लिए, business objectives को achieve करने के लिए सूदमंद हों या फ़ायदेमंद हों. The workforce competencies represent the critical pillars that support the strategic business plan. Their absence poses a severe risk of strategic business objectives. तो अगर आप वर्कफोर्स कॉम्पिटेंसी को बिजनेस ऑब्जेक्टिव्स के साथ जो कि आपके आज के बिजनेस ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं या फ्यूचर के बिजनेस ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं इनको टाई अप करें और उसके मुताबिक अपनी प्रैक्टिसेस को इम्प्लीमेंट करें तो उसके नतीजा में ये बहुत यूज़फुल होगा आपके ओवरऑल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के बिजनेस ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को मीट करने के लिए. सो द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ workforce competencies implemented in people CMM is very important. However, it differs from the concept of core competency. Core competency होती है वो organization के साथ मुतल्लिक होती है. It refers to an organization's combination of technology and production skills that create its products and services. And it is a little bit different फ्रॉम दी कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी जैसा कि आपको अभी एक मैं स्लाइड दिखाता हूँ उससे पता चलेगा. तो अब आप स्क्रीन पे वो हायरार्की देख रहे हैं ऑफ कॉम्पिटेंसी एब्स्ट्रैक्शंस जिसमें सबसे कम एब्स्ट्रैक्ट चीज़ कहनी चाहिए वो नॉलेज स्किल्स एंड प्रोसेस एबिलिटीज़ हैं. उससे ऊपर वर्क फोर्स कॉम्पिटेंसीज़ हैं और वर्क फोर्स कॉम्पिटेंसीज़ के ऊपर कोर कॉम्पिटेंसीज़ हैं. ईच workforce competency represents a distinct integration of the knowledge, skills, and process abilities required to perform some of the business activities that contribute to an organization's core competency. The range of workforce competencies an organization must integrate depends on the breadth and type of business activities that comprise its core competencies. Therefore, the workforce competencies are strategic underpinning or strategic foundation of the organization's core competencies. जितने ज़्यादा आपकी workforce competency एक एरिया में होगी उसी तरह आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जो core competency है वो उस एरिया में होगी. By defining process abilities as a component of workforce competencies, the people CMM becomes linked with the process frameworks established in other CMMs and with other process-based methods such as business process re-engineering. And business process re-engineering and other capability maturity models have shown success in improving process abilities of an organization as well. The process ability is demonstrated by performing the competency-based processes appropriate for an individual's required work competency. यानी कि एक individual की जो workforce capability है जो उससे require की जाती है उसको परफॉर्म करने के नतीजा में फेथफुली एंड करेक्टली आप उस की प्रोसेसिबिलिटी को देख सकते हैं. टू डिफाइन द प्रोसेसिबिलिटीज इनकॉर्पोरेटेड इन ईच वर्कफोर्स कॉम्पिटेंसी द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन defines the competency based processes that an individual would be expected to perform in accomplishing his or her committed work. यानी कि जो committed work, assigned work है उसको complete करने के लिए जो capabilities, जो competency based skills उसमें उस processes जो कि उसने follow किए हैं उसको incorporate करने के लिए वो process abilities की ज़रूरत है. Within a workforce competency, a competency based process is defined and it shows how individuals apply their knowledge, perform their skills, and apply their process abilities in the context of the organization's defined work processes. तो ये जो तीनों levels हैं, यानी कि knowledge, skills, process areas, then workforce competencies and core competency of the organizations, इन तीनों को people CMM ने link कर दिया. At maturity level 3, the organization builds an organization-wide framework of workforce competencies that establishes the architecture of the organization's workforce. इस लिहाज से क्योंकि पूरी organization के ऊपर level 3 एक ही किस्म की practices को, एक ही किस्म की workforce competency को implement कर रही होती है, इस तरह एक लिहाज से हम कह सकते हैं कि ये एक workforce architecture या competency architecture बन गया है, जिसको हम depending on the need we can not only evolve but we can also tailor to meet specific requirements or to perform specific projects. Since workforce competencies are strategic, the organization must develop strategic workforce plans for ensuring that the required capability in each of its current or anticipated workforce competencies can be incorporated. Or competency workforce processes form a basis for the work group roles and operating processes. Work groups can then organize themselves by tailoring and applying standard competency processes. जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि जो level 2 पे है वो unit एक manager के under एक unit होता है, that is the focus of organization. Level 3 में एक work group और work group से बढ़कर फिर एक organization हमारा focus होता है, and a common organization culture typically develops as the organization achieves the third maturity level or defined level. This culture is best described as one of professionalism, that is, since it is built from common understanding of the knowledge and skills and process abilities of individuals, and it is developed to achieve superior levels of performance, and it defines a competency-based processes that individuals have not only performed in units but can now perform at the level of the organization. Since these workforce competencies are strategic to the business, the organization reinforces their importance by developing and rewarding them. As a result, the entire workforce begins to share responsibility for developing increasing level of capability in the organization's workforce competency. यानी कि तमाम जो employees हैं, तमाम individuals जो हैं, they contribute in developing and enhancing the workforce competencies at level 3. The workforce practices that were implemented at level 2 are now standardized in the organization and adopted to encourage and reward growth in organizations workforce competency. यानी कि पूरी जो workforce है उसकी जो competency है, फिर group level competencies हैं, उनमें तमाम individuals हैं वो participate करते हैं. अब हम level 3 के ऊपर जो process areas हैं उनके ऊपर discussion करते हैं. Level 3 के process areas हैं जी competency analysis, workforce planning, competency development, career development, competency based practices, work group development, and participatory culture. The purpose of competency analysis is to identify the knowledge, skills, and process abilities required to perform the organization's business activities so that they may be developed and used as a basis for workforce practices. The purpose of workforce planning is to coordinate workforce activities with current and future business needs at both the organization and unit level. The purpose of competency development is to enhance constantly the ability of the workforce to perform its assigned tasks and responsibilities. The purpose of career development is to ensure that individuals are provided opportunities to develop workforce competencies that enable them to achieve career objective. यहाँ मैं थोड़ी सी बात करना चाहता हूँ कि एक और फ़र्क जो कि पीपल CMM को फॉलो करने वाली या ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में जो इंडिविजुअल्स की स्किल्स और कॉम्पिटेंसीज़ को इन्हांस करने के ऊपर तवज्जो रखती हैं, उनमें ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट होता है कि इंडिविजुअल्स अपने करियर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स बनाएं और ये डिफ़ाइन करें कि आइंदा 5 साल में या 10 साल में या 15 साल में वो क्या अचीव करना चाहते हैं प्रोफेशनली. तो इंडिविजुअल की करियर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को डिफ़ाइन करना, इंडिविजुअल्स के करियर डेवलपमेंट की तरफ तवज्जो देना, ये ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की अच्छी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का काम है. और उनमें करियर पाथ्स कहना चाहिए. अब करियर पाथ पहले यूज़ होता था, लेकिन कुछ अरसे से इसको अब करियर पाथ्स कहते हैं कि विद इन एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यू कैन एडवांस इन मल्टीपल वेज़. तो ये एक अच्छी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की निशानी है कि वहाँ पे करियर डेवलपमेंट को और एनहांसमेंट को इम्पोर्टेंस दी जाती है. उसके बाद कॉम्पिटेंसी बेस्ड प्रैक्टिसेस एक प्रोसेस एरिया है. इसका मकसद ये है दैट इट इंश्योर्स ऑल वर्किंग प्रैक्टिसेस आर बेस्ड in part on developing the competencies of the workforce. The purpose of work group development is to organize work around competency-based process abilities. And the last process area of level 3 is participatory culture. And the purpose of this process area is to enable the workforce's full capability for making decisions that affect the performance of business activities. तो ये जो आखिरी प्रोसेस एरिया है, इसके ऊपर भी मैं 1 मिनट आपका लेता हूँ. इसमें यह है कि आप डिसीजंस को टीम्स के ऊपर छोड़ देते हैं और लेट देम मेक द डिसीजंस, एंड individuals are involved in providing feedback as well as making decisions. अब हम 4th लेवल के ऊपर, जो कि प्रिडिक्टेबल लेवल कहलाता है, उसकी बात करते हैं. At this level, the organization manages and exploits the capability created by the framework of workforce competencies at level 3. This framework is sustained through formal mentoring activities, or the organization is now able to manage its capability and performance quantitatively. अगर आप गौर से देखें तो people CMM is very similar to in concept CMM software, क्योंकि इस लेवल के ऊपर हम CMM सॉफ्टवेयर में जब बात करते हैं तो क्वांटिटेटिव मैनेजमेंट आती है. यहाँ पर भी आप जो परफॉर्मेंस है और कैपेबिलिटी है उसको क्वांटिटेटिवली मैनेज करते हैं और क्वांटिटेटिवली डिस्क्राइब करते हैं. The organization is able to predict its capability for performance because they are quantitatively measuring it, and they can predict it in a much better way than without measurement data, because it can quantify the capability. जो कि वही बात है कि आप कैपेबिलिटी को जब क्वांटिफाई कर सकते हैं तो फिर उसको प्रिडिक्ट किया जा सकता है. एंड इसी तरह उसकी जो कॉम्पिटेंसी बेस्ड प्रोसेसेस हैं, they are also predictable by using the measurement data. There are at least 3 ways in which the workforce framework competencies enable the organization to more fully utilize the capabilities of the workforce. यानी कि 3 ऐसे तरीके हैं जिनसे एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो है वो वर्कफोर्स कॉम्पिटेंसीज को बेहतर तौर पर यूटिलाइज कर सकती है. नंबर 1 is when competent people perform their assignments using proven competency-based processes, management, trust the results they produced. यानी कि ऐसी प्रैक्टिसेस को जो कॉम्पिटेंसी बेस्ड प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, जब कॉम्पिटेंट लोग फॉलो करते हैं और उसके पीछे एक क्वांटिफाइबल नंबर होता है, एक कलेक्टेड नंबर होता है, तो मैनेजमेंट उसको बिलीव करती है, मैनेजमेंट उसके ऊपर ट्रस्ट करती है. दिस ट्रस्ट enables the organization to preserve the results of performing competency-based practices and develop them as an organizational asset to be reused by others who want to use it. In essence, people trust the assets because they trust the methods which are used to develop those assets. And this is very important. And this is the case which is the most compelling reason for adopting measurements and for adopting best practices. कि जब आप किसी रिजल्ट को या किसी एक्शन को ट्रस्ट करते हैं, उसकी वजह ये होती है कि आप देखते हैं कि किस तरीक पर वो टास्क जो है या एक्टिविटी है या प्रोसेस जो है वो फॉलो किया गया है. और अगर आप उस तरीक को ट्रस्ट करेंगे तो उसके नतीजे में जो रिज़ल्ट क्रिएट होगा या रिज़ल्ट जनरेट होगा या आउटपुट प्रोड्यूस होगी वो ट्रस्टेड होगी. When these assets are created and used effectively, learning spreads rapidly throughout the organization and productivity rises when there is little or no redevelopment. तो ये बहुत important है. Second बात ये है कि this trust also give managers the confidence that they need to empower work group. जब आप के टॉप मैनेजमेंट मिडिल मैनेजमेंट को और लोअर मैनेजमेंट को और टीम्स को ट्रस्ट करेगी क्योंकि बिकॉज दे परफॉर्म वेल, दे विल allow them to make decisions. So decision making is not done at the most highest level, but it is done in the lower management also and by project teams also. This transfer of responsibility frees up the management to take more appropriate and more important tasks which typically get neglected. They free themselves from managing day-to-day operations and performing some of their most important workforce practices, and they can see which work groups or which units require more resources and which group require more training, and so they free up the managerial operations at level 4 and give more time to strategic issues. Third point ये है कि when members of each workforce competency community have mastered their competency-based processes, the organization is able to integrate different competency-based processes into a single multidisciplinary process. An example of this would be the integration of software and hardware design processes into a single product design process, in which different competency-based processes are interwoven to at every point where they share potential dependency. जहाँ पर hardware और software की potential dependency है वो common हो जाती है, इसके अलावा जो process है उसको एक किया जाता है. Such multidisciplinary processes have proven accelerate business results. अब एक बात है, इसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा गौर करना चाहिए आपको कि हमारे इंडस्ट्री में EMM सॉफ्टवेयर था which was staged process या staged model for software process improvement. उसके बाद इसी तरह CMM system engineering थी, that was a continuous model. इन दोनों मॉडल्स को for a number of reasons collect करके एक CMMI CMM integration बनाया गया which is applicable to not only software but also hardware. अब हम उन process areas की बात करते हैं जो कि level 4 के लिए define किए गए हैं. इसमें competency integration है, empowered work groups हैं, competency based assets हैं, quantitative performance management है, organizational capability management है और mentoring है. The purpose of competency integration is to improve the efficiency and agility of interdependent work by integrating the process abilities of different workforce competencies. Empowered work groups, and the purpose of this process area is to invest work groups with the responsibility and authority to determine how to conduct their business activities most effectively. The purpose of competency-based assets is to capture the knowledge, experience, and artifacts developed in performing competency-based processes for use in enhancing capability and performance. The purpose of quantitative performance management is to predict and manage the capability of competency-based processes for achieving measurable performance objectives. The purpose of organizational capability management is to quantify and manage the capability of the workforce and the critical competency-based processes it performs. And finally, the purpose of mentoring is to transfer the lessons of greater experience in a workforce competency to improve the capability of other individuals or work groups. अब हम optimizing level या maturity level 5 के ऊपर बात करते हैं. At this level, the entire organization is focused on continual improvement, just like CMM software. These improvements are made to the capability of individuals and work groups, to the process of performance of competency-based processes and workforce practices and activities. The organization uses the results of quantitative management activities established in maturity level 4 to guide improvements at level 5. Although several individuals may be performing identical competency-based processes, they frequently exhibit individual differences in the method and work styles and they use to perform their assignments, and that's fine. At level 5, individuals are encouraged to make continuous improvements to personal work processes by analyzing their work and making necessary process enhancements, and so is true for work groups. Both work groups and individuals continually improve their performance. The organization must, however, keep an eye and be vigilant to ensure that the performance at all levels remain aligned with the organization's overall objectives. अब हम लेवल 5 पर जो प्रोसेस एरियाज हैं उनकी कुछ बात करते हैं. लेवल 5 पर 3 प्रोसेस एरियाज आइडेंटिफाई किए गए हैं: continuous capability improvement, organizational performance alignment, and continuous workforce innovation. The purpose of continuous capability improvement is to provide a foundation for individuals and work groups to continuously improve their capability for performing competency-based processes. The purpose of organizational performance alignment is to enhance the alignment of performance results across individuals, work groups, and units with organizational performance and business objectives. And finally, the continuous workforce innovation is the last process area at level 5, and its purpose is to identify and evaluate improved or innovative workforce practices and technologies and implement the most promising ones throughout the organization. So that brings to end the discussion on the 5 levels of process people CMM, and in each of the 5 levels we have talked about how organizations operate, and from level 2 to 5 we have talked about different process areas that are associated with each level and how an organization improves from level 1 to level 2, from level 2 to level 3, from level 3 to level 4, and finally to level 5. This ends our discussion on today's topic, and so thank you very much.